Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to this very special edition of the Erin Molan Show. It is so great to have your company, as always. Today, something a little bit different. We're going to deep dive into the Muslim Brotherhood. A lot of you will have heard of this. A lot of you will know a fair bit about it because you're highly engaged in this space. Some of you, though, will not really understand it, and I want to change that today with my very special guest. Her name is Dalia Ziada. She is so many things. I don't have enough time to go through all of her qualifications and all of her experience. She's an incredible activist from Egypt. She's also just joined ISGAP. She's with me right now. Dalia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Erin. Always a pleasure to be with you. And I'm glad about the topic we're going to speak about today.
So am I. Before we get into that, though, Dalia, could you give my audience an overview of who you are and how you came to leave Egypt and why you are now based in Washington and fighting for the free world, essentially?
I'm a Middle East scholar. I lived in Egypt most of my life. Until recently, I was advocating for Arab-Israeli dialogue and Muslim-Jewish-Christian dialogue from where I existed inside the Middle East. As you know, a very problematic region. And I can say my work was somehow successful until October 7 happened and everything in the region changed forever, including my own life, as unfortunately I was forced to flee my home country, Egypt, and come to the United States, running from death or imprisonment as radical Islamist groups, including the Muslim Brotherhood and even the more radical groups of the Salafists wanted to kill me. Simply because I publicly condemned Hamas. And on the other side, the Egyptian government refused to provide me with any protection only because I said I support Israel's right to defend itself against this terrorist organization that's called Hamas, which is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, which I have spent almost my adult life for almost 15 years now fighting against them, despite the fact that I am a Muslim myself, mainly because I believe they are not only a threat to the West or non-Muslim people in the West or the East, but also they are a threat to moderate Muslims, ordinary Muslims like myself, who don't want to see their identity, their religion being stolen by a terrorist organization that is weaponizing it to gain leverage and to gain political presence in Western communities today. So,
Could not agree with you more regarding the threat to moderate Muslims and devout Muslims around the world. As someone who lived in Indonesia with the world's largest Islamic population, they will say privately, Islamic extremism and these kind of groups hurt us more than anyone else. It's getting it public, which is the issue. And you know firsthand why that is so difficult, because look at what happened to you. But here you are speaking out so bravely, so courageously, saving so many lives. You mentioned the Muslim Brotherhood. It started in Egypt, your home country. It's now banned in Egypt. Can you tell me how it started and what do they want?
So the Muslim Brotherhood started almost a century ago in the year 1928. And it did not start in the big cities like Cairo or Alexandria, the capital city of Egypt, and the main cosmopolitan city, Alexandria. But it started in a very small town, very far away in the eastern of Egypt, very far away from the modern liberal lives that was happening in the main two cities of Egypt at that time. And why? And started there by actually a teacher, a very modest teacher. He was not like in any way charismatic, let's say, or has any power over the people around him other than speaking in the name of God. And from there, he started his da'wah, or preaching, or his movement, as he calls it, the da'wah. thinking that, and he went to these people, these poor people who are very distant from the main cities, the liberal life there, and also the wealth that existed in these main cities and the facilities and the infrastructure and so. And he told them, if you follow me, if you become more conservative Muslims, you will be better than the liberals who exist in Cairo and Alexandria. And unfortunately, if you go to poor people, helpless people, and tell them that I can give you something that makes you feel like you have an advantage over the people you envy in the bigger cities, of course they will follow you. And from there he started, and from people think that the group started first as a civil preaching or a non-violent preaching, and then later they formed militia. Actually, from day one, Hassan el-Banna was careful to recruit young people from his school, teenagers, in the high school he was teaching at, and he recruited them. He took them to boot camps and trained them on how to use weapons, how to be violent. And of course, he covered this with the cover of jihad, but he had an excuse to do jihad at that time under the fact that Egypt was at that time occupied by the British. So he framed it as a duty to resist against the British, but it's not anymore a national duty, but it's a divine duty. It's a duty from Allah. It's a mission. It's a jihad mission. And from there, the group started to adopt jihad as actually part of its main slogan, its motto. They are on a mission for jihad. Over the years, over this 100 years, the leadership or the main ecosystem that we call the Muslim Brotherhood adopted this idea of jihad, established the foundations upon which other factions, either the factions that directly belong to the group or the factions inspired by the group's teachings and rhetorics, started to adopt this idea of jihad and actually bring it to action, put it into practical action to practice actual jihad, actual violence. So although the Muslim Brotherhood, if we look at it as a collective, some people claim that it's non-violent, it didn't get directly involved in jihad, except for some of its factions. But the reality is that it has founded the ground upon which all the jihadists we know today, literally all the jihadists we know today, stand on, claiming that this is the right Islam or the right form of Sharia or whatever they say.
It's so interesting, the fact that he was a teacher and had power over young people, and we look at so many of the problems in the West today start from school, start with ideology that is pushed upon vulnerable children by adults with an agenda. And if this group, which has caused so much death and destruction, can be a result of that, look at what we're doing now, what's going to exist with our kids, what are they going to be a part of in 10 or 20 years? It is terrifying. Dalia, when did those in Egypt wake up to the fact that this was a threat, that this was dangerous? How long did it take for people to identify something sinister?
Actually, it started at the time of Gamal Abdel Nasser in the era of Gamal Abdel Nasser in the 1950s and 60s, when the country was more leaning on the communist side. This was the very first time we see that the government itself is standing up to the Muslim Brotherhood. But this was mainly like a political competition thing. They were fighting against the Muslim Brotherhood because they think they had greater power over the grassroots, over the
rather than a difference in ideology or the fact that they saw what they believed in to be wrong.
Exactly. So this was the first clash between the government, which was communist at that time, or socialist, and the Islamists, the radical Islamists. This led to big numbers or large numbers of the Muslim Brotherhood members and leaders fleeing Egypt And where did they go? They went to the West. Western countries, either in Europe, huge numbers went to the UK and also to the United States or North America in general, United States and Canada. And of course, some went to some places in Europe, but they did not survive for long. In the UK and in the US, they established their own bases around this time. And at that time, a new generations, by late 1970s and 80s, most of those who were imprisoned in the time of Abdel Nasser inside Egypt came out of the prison, and this I like to call the Islamist era of Egypt, 1970s and 80s. The Islamists got a lot of power, a lot of sympathy also from the general public. This was also the time when Hamas was born. This happened immediately after the Iranian Revolution, which inspired some sort of an Islamic revolution in the region. All the Islamists in the region, either Sunni or Shia, they just wanted to follow the example of Iran, and they had their momentum at that time. So those who came out of the prison started to make deals with the regimes that existed at that time in Egypt, which was the regime of President Mubarak, the previous president, who was removed by a revolution 30 years later. And they made deals with him that we will never challenge your power, but let us work on the grassroots level. Let us work at rural cities, which, by the way, in Egypt, rural cities are something like more than 70% of the population live in rural cities. So let us work there. We will not challenge your power and so. And then, meanwhile, those who traveled to the West, those who immigrated to the Western countries, they started to establish a plan for what they want to achieve in these Western countries. I will come to it in a second. But let's focus first on those who made deals with the Egyptian regime. So they kept their promise until by the year 2005, there was a big momentum for the democratic movement in Egypt and in the Arab world in general, mainly sponsored by the Bush administration. In reaction to the 9/11 attacks, the Bush administration thought that the best way to prevent a similar attack from happening again is to go and make democratic reform in Middle Eastern countries where this terrorism came from. So in hope that the new generations will be more democratic, more liberal, more pro human rights and so on. But what happened actually is that, unfortunately, while empowering, liberal democratic movement, a young liberal democratic movement in Egypt and other Arab countries, they also empowered the Muslim Brotherhood, who at that time represented themselves as an opposition in Egypt. And thus, they were empowered in the process, and they started to have seats in the parliament, decide for legislation, and even challenge the government for the first time. And then about 5 years after that, the Arab Spring happened, the Mubarak regime was removed, and the Muslim Brotherhood took power in Egypt.
So that point there where they started to challenge for seats, was that when they moved initially from a religious movement into more of a political movement? Was that the moment?
Actually, from day one, they were a political movement. They justify this by saying that Prophet Muhammad himself was a political leader. And Islam is meant, from their perspective, to be a political religion. We should be on a mission to spread, this is their words, not mine, to spread the word of Islam worldwide through da'wah or sometimes even through jihad. And this, from their perspective, also a mission on all Muslims. So from day one, they were political, except that they selected very carefully when to show their political side and when to show the religious side.
Got you. So the Arab Springs occurred. Let's go from there.
So the Arab Spring occurred, and I was one of the leaders, actually, of the revolution that removed Mubarak. And to my shock, and to the shock of all the people who were in the liberal democratic movement with me, the Muslim Brotherhood hijacked our revolution, and they took over power. And all of a sudden, they are deciding for our future in parliament, in the presidential office. And they actually, I remember, like, the first few legislations they made, especially they partnered with the Salafists, like they put the Muslim Brotherhood in the presidency and the Salafists in parliament. And the Salafists in the parliament, endorsed by the Muslim Brotherhood in presidency. The first few legislations they made were not about improving the economy, for example, or more democratic, or more democracy in Egypt, or something like that. No. It was about, the first two legislation. The first one was about legalizing the marriage of minor girls around 9 years old. And so the second was also legalizing FGM, female genital mutilation, a horrible practice. People can read about.
The first two, the priority of these people, their first crack at power in an official, legitimate capacity was those two things.
Exactly. To slaughter women, literally, like, FGM, and get girls 9 years old to get married. This is insane.
From a personal perspective, as someone who had fought so hard to free your people from a kind of hell that they were living under, to then have it hijacked, did that break you almost? How did that feel?
Oh my God, it was terrible. Actually, this awakened... I remember very well, this awakened in us as Egyptians, especially two groups in Egypt, women and Coptic Christians. And in Egypt, when we speak about Coptic Christians, they are not a minority. We're speaking about at least 20 million people. So these two main groups in the country, they felt threatened immediately by what the Muslim Brotherhood did. And it was amazing how we came together at that time. Coptic Christians, Muslims, women, men who care about their Egyptian identity more than this very extremist ideology, and so came together, and we led another revolution just 1 year after the first revolution that brought down Mubarak and brought in the Muslim Brotherhood. We led another revolution to remove the Muslim Brotherhood from power, and it succeeded. However, unfortunately, as we all know, it was very quickly hijacked by the military afterwards. So it's like a cycle. We do successes, like, in removing dictators, and other dictators take over. So this actually was, and then after that, when the military took over, they decided to ban the Muslim Brotherhood and remove them from Egypt completely. And actually, I blame them for one thing, that their fight at that time was not a fight against the ideology itself, the radical Islamist ideology, but a fight against the Islamists who threaten their power. So that was
the same as the first time. Again, it wasn't ever about doing the right thing. It was about a threat to their own power.
Exactly. So we ended up with a situation where the military eventually was able to take over power. The Muslim Brotherhood was suppressed. Either they went under the ground again inside Egypt. Many of them were put in prison. And many fled where, once again, to the Western world. And this time they did not only go to the UK or the US, but they went to Australia, they went to some European countries, the most famous of them is Germany, and so on.
And were they all let in legally, or was it illegally? Was it a balance and a mix? Like, so governments just essentially welcomed them with open arms? Was there not enough knowledge about who they are? Was it just ignorance, naivety?
Yeah, actually, in some countries, yes, they floated with large numbers illegally. Some other countries embraced them, like Germany and Turkey. Turkey,
Yeah.
for understandable reasons, Turkey is a big supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Germany, countries like Germany, the U.S., Australia, and others, they were treating them as human rights activists or
Yeah.
political opposition, because this is the lie. They lied, actually, and unfortunately, people here, out of maybe naivety or lack of proper understanding of their nature, they accepted them. But the most problematic country was the UK. The
Yeah.
UK, actually around the year, I think 2015, I'm not sure, like around 2015, they actually allowed a lot of the members of the Muslim Brotherhood to go there, and they made it acceptable. Like, if you are a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, you're welcome. They said it like so clearly, like it's not about you're an opposition. If you are a member of the Muslim Brotherhood and you are endorsed by another Muslim Brotherhood inside the country, you are welcome. Can you believe this? So they ended up.
I can, because I'm looking at the UK today. I can absolutely believe that.
Horrible, right? Yeah. Actually, the UK today is the only place where the group can have an office with its name. The Muslim Brotherhood can have an office and a banner on this office with their name, the Office of the Muslim Brotherhood in the UK. Can you? It's unbelievable. We are living in a crazy world, actually. So in parallel with that, actually, in parallel with all this timeline we saw happening in the Middle East and how they left, what happened is that they were already building their bases here in the United States and in North America in general, Canada and the United States. And how they built that, they created created a strategy, a plan that they called the project of the Muslim Brotherhood in the West. It was first created in Europe by the Muslim Brotherhood leaders in Europe in the 1982-83. And then this project, it was just, the project was very general plan, very general vision, let's say. It was a vision of what they want to achieve, which is building their own caliphate system in the West, in these Western countries. However, the smart Muslim Brotherhood in the US, they took this project around the year 1992, and they transferred it into an action plan. And they called it the Explanatory Memorandum for the Muslim Brotherhood strategy or plan in North America. And this plan, actually, it was kind of the manifesto that the group has been following since then. The main premises or the main thesis of this plan is creating something called tamkeen. In the official translation, it's called settlement, but is official translation by the US government. It's called settlement, but it's not very accurate, actually. In Arabic, tamkeen, to be translated in English, is empowerment. It's about how they describe this empowerment, this tamkeen. They say that our role here as a Muslim Brotherhood is to lead a civilizational jihad with the purpose to destroy the Western civilization from within.
From
Exactly.
within.
Sabotage the Western civilization from within. So this is the goal. It's not about like launching jihad and bringing forces, Muslim forces, or let's say Muslim fight jihadists from outside and come and destroy the West. No, the goal is to radicalize the Western society, the Western people.
Youth. But the youth, first and foremost, exactly how they started, in a schoolroom with one teacher and young, vulnerable people. It's the same playbook. And they tell us, Dalia, they wrote it down. Why don't we believe them?
It's written down. It has been investigated by an American court, the Holy Land Foundation trial. The FBI made a whole report about it that was revealed later. But still, there are people in the American society who don't want, in the West in general, actually, who don't want to accept that the Muslim Brotherhood is a real threat to them, is that radical Islamism is what's going to end the West, unfortunately. So they are empowering them either out of belief in free speech, freedom of religion. They are mixing concepts. But I'm telling you, as a Muslim, you will make me more free, you will make me more safe if you fight against these radicals, because they threaten me too.
Yeah. It's such a key point, and this is the same when you look at kids in Gaza and people trying to blame Israel, and you say their enemy is Hamas. If you want to help kids in Gaza, you got to erase the enemy that is responsible for their suffering, that gives them a death sentence upon birth. This is the ideology. Looking around the world, some countries have banned, others haven't, and there are processes in place, like in America at the moment. Where is that up to? And how much of a rush should we be in? This isn't something we can kind of just, when we get to it, okay, I get it, but all in good time. Like this is a here and now threat to all of us, isn't it?
Of course, the Muslim Brotherhood must be banned in major Western countries, in major powers like the US, Canada, the UK, and I think Australia, of course. I think it all has to start from the United States, because if the United States does it, everyone will follow, as we know. So what is making Western, although, by the way, Arab countries has already, in large number of them has already designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization.
This is the thing. They know this group better than anyone, and they have determined they don't want it. So exactly. Why do the West think they know better than the countries at the coalface?
The challenge for Western countries is that when it comes to designating the Muslim Brotherhood, we are speaking about the Western countries that has rule of law comes first above everything. And if they want to do it, they have to do it through constitutional and legal measures. So although the Muslim Brotherhood is already designated as a terrorist organization in several Arab countries, we're speaking about at least 5 Arab countries has already designated the group as a terrorist organization and banned them, including Egypt, the country where this group started. The Western countries are still struggling with making such a designation for several reasons. The most important of them is that the group is not yet defined as a one whole. It's not monolithic. You cannot say from here to here, this is the Muslim Brotherhood. And for many years, the Muslim Brotherhood in the West, they learned to play this game in order to...
It's part of their strategy, isn't it? It's part of their strategy.
It's part of their strategy to create networks, to create civil society groups, educational groups, campus groups, and so it's an ecosystem, a network of people working in synchronity, but actually you cannot identify them as a one whole easily.
Yeah.
So for so long, for legal reasons mainly, countries like the United States was struggling to identify what exactly the Muslim Brotherhood is. The second challenge is to prove that the Muslim Brotherhood as a group has committed violations that count as a threat to the U.S. national security or to the interests of U.S. allies. So to prove that, it was also a challenge because the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood in Western countries, including the United States, they don't go out and say, they don't do violence publicly. They incite violence, they fund violence, but usually outside the United States and so. In the past 2 years, something extraordinary happened. The protesters, the violent protesters that happened in support of Hamas. And I say they are extraordinary because they were the perfect manifestation, actually, the peak of the manifestation of the 100-year plan of the Muslim Brotherhood, of the Muslim Brotherhood project to sabotage the West from within and achieve tamkeen or empowerment in the West. And how did they do it? Through the process that I like to call the Palestinization. It's a term that I invented, the Palestinization of the American politics. What we mean by that? If we go and read the teachings of one of the main ideologues of the Muslim Brotherhood, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who was based in Doha, Qatar, before he died a couple of years ago, all his teachings were directed to the Muslim Brotherhood and their affiliates in the West. And he was always instructing that they have to make Palestine, as they call it, the central cause for all Muslims, the glue that will bring the Muslim communities together and give the Muslim Brotherhood the power to lead these numbers of Muslims in order to influence policy making in the Western countries they are in. So it's a tool of empowerment, actually, this Palestinian cause they fight for. That's why in the past 2 years, I think this was the first time they show us the real face. The Muslim Brotherhood, for the first time, showed us the real face through the protests they were making, vandalizing public properties, calling for death to America in their protests and so. Of course, they did not come out as, oh, we are the Muslim Brotherhood leading the protests, but it was very easy to identify members of the group or sympathizers and people who are aligning with this ideology present in these protests. That was
and Dalia, is that because they've become so confident in how established they are and how powerful they are that they're not as careful anymore? What's behind them suddenly showing more of who they are?
I think what motivated them the most was that it was a golden opportunity for them that they needed to build on. The footage coming from Gaza is horrible. So it's easy to align other groups using this footage, to align other groups in the radical left in particular, which, by the way, it is their main target. So what happened over the 5 years before October 7? We saw the woke movement started, then the progressives and the radical left started to have the upper hand in the American society. We saw some incidents of political violence, which it seems to me that at that time the Islamists thought, okay, these people adopt almost similar goals like ours. They also want to destroy America. The radical left think America is the imperialist, colonialist power that needs to be destroyed. The Islamists, they want to destroy America so they can build their own caliphate. So they thought, okay, this group, we need to join forces, build coalition with this group, the radical left, the Marxists, you know. And by the way, it's also written in the explanatory memorandum, creating coalitions with groups that align with the same, with other political groups that align with the same ideology. And actually, this is exactly what they did. They tried to engage with the radical left over the past few years. However, like fundamental differences in their perception on some issues made it difficult to fully merge.
So that's like the treatment of women, LGBTQI rights.
Exactly. So this prevented them from fully merging together until October 7 happened and the Gaza tragedy started. And it's a very good theater, very good platform to merge these two forces together. And actually they used it and they started to align the radical left under the banner of standing up for a humanitarian situation in Gaza or so, and they succeeded in doing so. And we ended up seeing all the horrors that happened in Western countries over the past 2 years by the radical left and the radical Islamists, including killing in the US, not very far away away from where I'm talking to you in Washington right
Yeah.
now. Two young people who were working at the Israeli embassy, one of them was a friend, were killed with cold blood in the name of free Palestine, and they were not killed by an Islamist. They were killed
Yes.
by a radical left, by a progressive guy.
And Dalia, would they be sitting back now thinking, we've planned this absolutely, but we could never have envisaged how bloody well it would have gone, how successful we could have been? Do you think they'd be sitting back and going, wow, even we are impressed at what has occurred?
I think so. Actually, I saw a video by the leader of CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations, one of the organizations that was labeled as unindicted conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial, and was suspected of what were actually seen as one of the suspects of the and today is seen by so many as one of the main organizations promoting the Muslim Brotherhood agenda and ideology in the United States. The leader of this organization, I saw a video of him a few days ago. He was speaking about exactly this concept of tamkeen I'm talking to you, I told you about empowerment, and he's saying it step by step. Now we have achieved the success, in the past 2 years. Let's build on that. What we need to do next, and he explaining it step by step, exactly similar to what is written in the explanatory memorandum. It was a very scary video, but it tells you, yes, of course, they feel that they are successful. And now actually one of them, Zohran Mamdani, the next mayor of New York, the big city of New York. And it's definitely a victory. And actually another one of the main leaders who also has been caught promoting this ideology for so long, Linda Sarsour, I saw also a video for her, like also maybe yesterday or so, saying just that this is a victory for their ideology. Mamdani's coming to power in New York, coming to the top of becoming the mayor of New York, it's an ascendance for their ideology. So
what kind of threat does he pose in control of such a big city with such a big economy, someone that subscribes to this ideology, and the things that he has said in the past? I can't understand why anyone is voting for him, but I can understand because we've just gone through exactly why. What kind of a threat does he pose in a position of power?
So Zohran Mamdani, the issue about him, actually, it's not as they are claiming that he's from a Muslim background or so. No, this is not the issue. The issue is that he is the perfect manifestation, or he in himself, in his character, in his background, in his education and upbringing, he embodies this sinful marriage between the radical left, socialism, Marxism, and radical Islamism. And sadly, since even before his campaign, he was promoting exactly what these two ideologies say about hatred towards the Jews, towards Israel, towards the United States. As we know today, they want to shape it into a different country, socialist, Marxist country, that will be just another copy of all the socialist Marxist regimes that has failed. So his rhetoric, his narrative, what he represents even as a person is the problematic thing here.
He's the child of the two in equal parts, in that the extreme Islamic ideology that he doesn't only hold and believe in, that he expresses alongside wanting to legalize prostitution and going into nightclubs with strippers and transgender and embracing that community as well. He's actually
it's
perfect person to execute this plan.
It's good you mentioned this point, because one of the things that make me laugh, but I'm not making laugh of the people who think this way, but they think that, the Islamists are always people with long beards and they are holding a sword and they are shouting jihad all the time. No, no, no. Actually, the modern Islamists, which I call neo-Islamists or neo-jihadists, they are nice people. They look nice, they dress nicely, they go to clubs, they watch movies and so. But deep inside, they dearly embrace this radical Islamist ideology, thinking that this is the true Islam. This is what they need to do and follow. So, don't be fooled by those who put on the outside that they are liberal, they are, they sing, they watch movies and so, but actually in reality they adopt their idea. What matters is what's in your heart, not how you look like, really.
100%. My last question, I want to ask you this. There's been a lot of focus on the peace deal in the Middle East that has been brokered by US President Donald Trump. He's done, regardless of what you think of him, an incredible job of bringing so many people together, including Indonesia, the world's largest Islamic population, getting a lot of the Arab states on board. My question to you is not whether or not you're optimistic that that will hold, but does it even matter when what we're trying to contain there is already in the West, spreading and growing?
Unfortunately, there are two battles that has to be fought in parallel. On one side, of course, the U.S. returned to the Middle East with that heavy weight, and this level of involvement is going to improve things there sooner or later. We are facing some challenges with Hamas on the ground now, but I am sure the U.S. will not allow this to elongate or go longer than this. On the other side, the real battle really is what's happening here in the West. The rise of anti-Semitism as a result of a war happening thousands of miles away is something we need to fight against. The rise of radicalism and polarization in Western societies because of also a conflict happening thousands of miles away is something that we need to fight against. The empowerment of radicals from the radical left and radical Islamists to political positions of power or positions of political power, this is also something we have to fight against before it's too late. Look, Erin, I saw how these radicals destroyed my home country, Egypt, and I don't want them to do the same here in the United States. This is the country, because it's a liberal democratic country, it was my refuge when I was looking for a place to run to. So I don't want it to be destroyed. I don't want to see the same radicals who destroyed my homeland, Egypt, destroy the United States as well. Because really, this will not be only the end of the United States as we know it. This will be the end of the free, liberal, Western world. So this is the real fight.
You're absolutely right. I wish you were wrong, but I know you're not wrong. You are absolutely right. You are doing your part absolutely to fight against that, and I thank you for it. Every single day, you are a superhero, Dalia. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Erin Molan Show. And if people want to follow you specifically, how can they follow your incredibly important work?
Thank you so much, Erin. For following me, it's so easy. It's my full name, Dalia Ziada, one word, on all social media platforms.
You are brilliant. Thank you so much again for your time. And thank you so much to my audience for sticking with us. I know this went a little bit long, but I think it matters so, so much. You need to understand your enemy or you cannot defeat it. And now I hope you have, well, I know you have an incredible understanding of who these people are and more importantly, what they want and how they're planning to achieve it. Dalia Ziada, again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Erin.
Love you all. Thanks so much for watching and for listening. And I'll see you over the weekend for our bonus episode. And then, of course, 6 a.m. ET on Monday. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Erin Molan Show.